Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike, the Cranky Fan. It's draft day.
It is happy draft eve, draft day. As I'm so excited, I just spilled hot chocolate all over my face. So I'm in that excitement for it. You know, we finally, after months and months and months and months and months and months of analyzing, we are finally here. We finally can take real steps to make this team better.
Well, I mean, that either happened because you're so excited or because we're so exhausted we become sloppy. I'm tired,
think so.
Man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm super excited for the draft because I always am, and I love the draft, and I think it's a lot of fun. It's the best non-sport activity in sports. But this is the most work I've ever done for it, and I cannot wait for it to be over.
I can't wait for it to be over because, Grump and I, we have, as you know, watching the show and listening to it for years now, we have slightly different perspectives on how we approach, the Giants and the NFL and football.
College, for that matter.
In college, yeah. I mean, Grump is obviously, he's the guy who gets into the film room, he shuts the door and comes out in 7 days and says, these are the great guys to get. I'm the guy who kind of just does the eye test a little more and gives you my opinions on things. So to me...
But you also watch them grow over the years in the SEC.
That's true. But that's more of like an organic process of like I'm watching, people from Florida, people from the SEC, college football in general, over their, 2 years and 3 years of playing and some occasionally 4 years. But it's kind of organic. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours watching every snap type of thing. But to me, it becomes overload and it just gets exhausting. I know, the draft itself is great. It's very exciting. Everybody thinks they're going to win the Super Bowl after, and it's great to watch how your team is being built and seeing how your rivals' team are being built. But I just personally think there's too much time in between the Super Bowl and the draft. I think that, we have so much. It's good and bad. We have so much more information out there. We have, there's film everywhere. Grump got to go to this Senior Bowl and watch with his own two eyes. There's a million great podcasts, not just Giant specific, but NFL specific, that there's so much information that just keeps getting assimilated. Not a whole heck of a lot of it's new.
It's true.
And I think that's kind of the problem it's a fascinating, pre-draft season where all this, stories happen, people rise and fall really for no reason.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, the late risers, it's not because they did anything. It's because they weren't a big name going into the draft, and people finally got around to watching them because they were on a list somewhere, and they're like, hey, this kid's actually really good. He just plays at, I don't know, Wake Forest. Well, and also, that's why no one knows.
Yeah. I mean, also, if you are a guy who does multiple versions of mock drafts, version 6, version 7, it would take a lot of balls, and I'd actually appreciate it to be like, Mach 6 hasn't changed from 5 and 4. I still think this is the way it's going. It's like,
I think editors won't even allow it.
They won't. So what happens is because you need to, if you're doing Mach 6, you're doing Mach 7, you got to mix things up. And then this is a lot of the media, especially the old guard media, they're a bunch of sheep. And if one guy decides to move someone up into the top 10, all of a sudden it's news. It's not news that he's reporting this, it's now news. And it's like, and I think someone like Thibodeau is a great example of this, where this draft is last fall, this draft is in January. He's probably a number 1 or 2 pick in the draft.
Agreed.
I think we just have so much time on our hands and we have to create stories and just boredom that guys fall. I mean, are they really falling on GM's big boards every day, every week? Probably not. I mean, what do you think, Grump? Do you think these, like, a GM's big board is pretty much locked in, and at a point, when is it locked in? Do you think they're still tinkering tonight, or are they all sleeping like babies because they're done, just waiting for phone calls for potential trades?
No, I mean, I think they're done now. I mean, right? It's draft eve. They're doing their pre-draft work now, which is like the day of stuff. They're getting ready for trades, anticipating any phone calls, being ready if X, Y, and Z scenario is under, that kind of thing. I
agree.
They're ready for the night. Their big board was probably absolutely completed by Sunday, but they were probably only tinkering with the last few guys and maybe moving a guy one slot up or down for the last week, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they were mostly done for a while.
I think they're spending the week, right. If Team X calls us, or what are we valuing our guys? Like what would we accept in trades, and what how that cadence is going to go. But I think they're done as well, and they're not listening to mock boards, and they don't care what CBS Sports has as their version 13. They don't care what Mel Kiper's saying. They don't care, unfortunately, what Grump says. Well, I think it's a major mistake, but so be it. But
if only Jerry Reese listened to me, we wouldn't have had to endure Eric Flowers.
Yeah.
Or Evan Ingram, hated that pick as well. Mm-hmm. That was the one that made me shut off the TV.
Where were you with the Daniel Jones pick? I forget.
How did I feel about it?
Yeah.
I remember the text I sent you right away. It was oh boy. And that was more, I knew what the fan reaction was going to be.
That's what's the backlash.
I mean, I wasn't thrilled about it either, especially with Josh Allen on the board. We always need an edge rusher. So, I mean, it was more about that than the Daniel Jones pick itself. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it was just one of those things where I was more anticipating an avalanche of just Giants rage. And I actually didn't even imagine it would be as bad as it was, which was that rolled over all the way into him throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium and getting booed.
Yeah.
I really didn't expect it to be like that. That was a little ridiculous. My Saquon Barkley reaction. I mean, you're not going to see this from either one of us. Any predetermined draft reaction video where I'm breaking my hundreds of dollars worth of technology for the likes and the lulz. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Right. The Barkley pick was one of the ones that made me really mad, and I remember just rotating in my chair and chugging a beer. That was my reaction to that. The Evan Ingram one made me turn off the TV, although we were picking like 30th or something. We were picking like in the late 20s, so it was mostly over at that point anyway. And Eric Flowers, I was with you at the bar, and I wanted to fucking hang myself.
That's right. Remember that?
Yeah, I was pissed.
So let's kind of work backwards a little bit. Like, what is the one thing you don't want to see happen tomorrow?
I think there's a number of things I don't want to see happen tomorrow. One of them is taking a quarterback, and I truly try. I mean, I went into this with feelings about Malik Willis before I ever watched him, but they were not only confirmed, but they were worse than I feared when I did the work on him. And it's just, if you're taking Malik Willis, it's almost a Hail Mary on upside. He is very, very raw. And I'm not as worried about that, though. I don't think Joe Shane is going to attach himself to a quarterback in year one, especially with these QBs. I just don't think he's going to do it.
You had mentioned something several weeks back that not taking a quarterback rather pauses when the clock is on for you. Correct. When you're really getting, like this is a pass year. I mean, for everything that's happened in the past decade, and they're here and they're reassessing. They're really going to get a pass for whatever they do this year. And I think if you take a quarterback, whether it's at one of the two picks we have now, or if we trade down to 25 and take one there, you're kind of resetting that clock, and you're starting to put the Giants on the clock and Joe Shane on the clock.
Yeah. So what you're doing then is you're putting a clock on Joe Shane.
Right.
The rebuild itself is starting now, right? I mean, they've pretty much dumpster filed everything.
I'm talking about when the period of getting a pass versus, okay, it's on you right now.
Right. And I think that clock starts the moment you take a quarterback.
Correct.
I'm not really fearing that one. I would say I would be pretty pissed off if they went safety with one of the really high picks. I mean, if they end up in the late half of the first round, and we'll get into all this stuff in a little bit, but I would be really pissed if they wound up with a safety really high. I don't think that there's a safety good enough to be picked really high. That includes Kyle Hamilton. As bad of a need as it is, it seems to be a waste when there are serious needs other places. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man.
My biggest thing would be the only thing I could, I don't think a quarterback is realistic, so I'm not really considering that even happening. A running back, obviously not. Things like that would be silly. We got to come away with one of these two picks with an offensive lineman. We have to come up with a right tackle. If there's something happens where we get an edge and then we trade down, I'm going to be pretty disappointed because to me, again, besides what has to happen on the field of rebuilding this offensive line, it sends a signal that we are going to stop kicking the can down the road.
Sure.
And we're serious about, we're serious about giving Daniel Jones a chance. We're serious about revamping this offense. We're serious about building the offensive line. And the difference between, where we're drafting for getting an elite edge rusher and getting a very good to elite right tackle is very small. And if that siren call of the edge rusher just overwhelms them, and we'll talk about Thibodeau in a minute, but if somebody we don't expect drops down to to one of our picks and we don't take an offensive lineman and then we get an opportunity to trade down, even if it's for a first round pick next year, I'm going to be pretty upset. And that's not saying, oh my God, I have no confidence in this regime or anything, nothing ridiculous like that. But I'm going to be very upset that we are not handling the biggest problem we have with this team. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Get it done.
We're going to get into what we feel they need to do night one, but first let's jump into those rumors here. So I was listening to Clapback Sports today, Wednesday, while we're recording this, at work today, and they had Chad Forbes on, who said very, very confidently and nonchalantly when they mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau, he just very quickly said Kayvon Thibodeau was off their board, and then repeated it. I have it on good authority that Kayvon Thibodeau is not on the Giants' big board. He highlighted some personality issues plus some on the field stuff. They just feel like they need to get their shit right. They need to get their culture right, and they don't want any me or I guys there. This is as being told by Chad Forbes. I'm not saying one way or another. What I will say about Kayvon Thibodeau is I think that his abilities might be a little overblown. I'm thinking that Thibodeau, to me, and I'm not good at this, so whatever, but he looks to me like what JPP was like at best, and that's not a bad thing. But I don't think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be JJ Watt in the NFL. I don't think he's that all-world. I think he's the alpha edge guy for sure, the same way JPP is, but also JPP was a little up and down, and also needed other help around him to be successful. We talked at length. Did the show exist before he blew up his hand? I don't think so. No. Well, okay, you and I talked at length about what we were even going to do about JPP's contract and what before he blew up his hand. A lot of the argument was that he had one really good year and the rest was just kind of whatever. Right. I kind of think that Kayvon Thibodeau is going to have a lot of years where he's like somewhere between 6 and 8 sacks, and then he'll have a year or two where he's got 12 and a half and 10 or something. And it's going to be sprinkled around. I don't think they're going to be back to back. That's just what I think. I would love Thibodeau on this team. Don't try and take this any other way. I'm just saying, I'm trying to set the expectations here. This draft isn't really that great at the top. So I'll start with that. What do you think about Thibodeau potentially being entirely off of the Giants board?
I don't buy it.
You don't buy it? Okay.
I don't. I think my sense of that's smoke.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, nobody should be off the Giants board.
Fair enough.
Nobody. I mean, you may have him a little lower than you might have some other guys you're considering, both at the position and in your overall board, but to be not on the board, that seems to be a disservice to your team.
Okay.
I mean, what are the real issues that people have with Kayvon Thibodeau? It's not that he has a criminal record.
Nope.
It's not that a guy that, is an issue in the locker room, an issue with coaches. It sounds like it's an issue of a guy wanting to be, what basically almost every modern athlete wants to be today. They want to be businessmen. They want to be brands. They want to be
set up for life after.
Set up for life after. And, this is the same organization that, I'm told that they really want to keep Saquon Barkley to be the face of this franchise. Face of this franchise, to me, means that's the guy you're marketing. That's the
Yeah.
guy you want on all the ads. That's the guy that, and also two-way street. He wants to be that guy as well.
Oh, 100%. He's got the
So,
SB
so
earring and all that, the
right.
2-6
So
earring.
why is it okay if we have guys like Saquon Barkley and even guys like, Odell Beckham? I mean, they did not trade Odell Beckham because he wanted to be a brand.
No, that was not
They
why.
traded Odell Beckham because of the issues they were just having with him.
Well, quite frankly, they couldn't control him.
They couldn't control him.
I mean, let's be honest. He could do something tomorrow and they would have no idea it was coming. I don't think they really knew about that Lil Wayne interview.
I'm pretty positive they didn't.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say, because I agree with a lot of what you just said. To highlight their issues is that they are trying to obtain football players that, quote, love the game of football. And that means, like, they don't want to be drafting guys that are like Kadarius Toney, where they might have questions about how much they like football versus other things in their life, like music or whatever. Now, that's not a knock on them for being bad people. It's just what they're targeting. Again, this is a report. I'm not saying any of this.
Let me ask you something, though. Do you think wide receiver is just a different type of football player altogether than, an edge rusher?
No,
I mean,
yes. I think wide receiver is an extreme version of the same kind of player. I mean, I think there are, the same thing with corners. Corners and wide receivers, they tend to be very much in the spotlight as part of their... But that's not what I meant. Yeah.
I mean, you have to... If you're an edge guy, you have to spend, I'm sure, more time in the gym than a receiver does. You have to spend more time getting yourself in condition than I think than some of these outside guys have to. You have to understand the defensive playbook, and especially, to me, it just seems like a harder position to play where you have to do all the things you have to do from January to September takes more effort, more work that you have to want to do than a receiver who, seems to me like you can kind of just be a Kadarius Toney, and just kind of show up and be effective. You can't just show up if you're Thibodeau on game day and expect to be the dominating presence that he is or someone like him is. So I don't know where that comes from, this not loving the game. It sounds like it's a narrative that just keeps growing. I don't know. When I hear stuff like that, I think people kind of put 2 and 2 together and think that equals 4. And is it really the case?
I don't know. And I also can't speak to what you were saying about conditioning and work ethic. I legitimately don't know the answer to that. Could be, might not be. I don't know.
It may or may not be, but it just seems to me like it takes more work because you have to,
I think it depends, right? I think you're comparing 2 different things. I don't think Kadarius Toney is looked at as an alpha wide receiver the same way Kayvon Thibodeau is looked at as an alpha edge, where, Kadarius Toney, maybe he's the kind of wide receiver you can say, just go out there and be a wide receiver. Just play. Just run. Be crazy. You know what I mean? There are edge rushers that you say, like, forget everything, just hit the quarterback.
That's pretty ironic.
I don't think that's
that.
Thibodeau.
It's funny you say it about it. If that's the case for Kadarius Toney, then why do we care if he's in OTAs in April, right? If he's just telling
that's because that's the guy you picked for the
right.
comp. I'm just saying, like, there are wide receivers that are probably like that. But the alpha wide receivers, the ones that, the Julio Jones of the world, I think they are probably, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of playbook stuff that goes on. I think that might be actually flip-flop now that I'm thinking about it. The offense, you think back to those Kevin Gilbride days and you hear that there were 3 plays called in the huddle and for each play, there's 3 different routes a receiver could run based on what's called the line of scrimmage. And that's a lot of shit to think about in a 30-second, window there. So I don't know. But regardless, if this is the case and Thibodeau is off the board for the Giants and they're sitting there at 5 with Thibodeau there and 2 tackles are on the board, I'm going to start fielding phone calls at 5 because you don't want Tibbs. And if there's 2 of the tackles that you like there, then you're guaranteed one of them. So start listening to what you can get for 5 at that point, right?
Are you talking about from 6 or just from
5? If the Giants are at 5 and Thibodeau is on the board and so is, I don't know, Ekwonu and Charles Cross,
right?
And they don't want Tibbs, then I'll just trade 5 and then pick whichever tackle goes to 7. Because I guarantee you...
Well, we would have 7.
That's my point. So I'd trade 5 for whatever I can get, let somebody else trade up and take Thibodeau, and then take whatever tackle falls. I guess the risk there is that someone might trade up for Ekwonu or Cross.
Are those guys you're trading up for? I mean, now we're talking about, the potentially the...
Well, we might.
Third,
Somebody else might, yeah.
I mean, if it's for Evan Neal, that's one thing, I think. But for these guys, is that really... Are you really going to give up at that level, potentially like a first-round pick to get one of these two guys?
Well, that's going to lead into our next thing here. I think that different teams have the tackles in different orders. And I've heard that around from different beat reporters saying that they talk to scouts from this team, that team, and the other team, and everyone's got different order for how they grade the tackles.
And that's fine.
Yeah, no, that is fine. So, I mean, yes, it might be the 3rd or 4th tackle on our board. Maybe it won't be. Maybe that's the 2nd tackle on our board and he's falling. I don't know. The other thing here is Chad Forbes also said that the Jaguars seem to be split 3 ways in what they want to do with the first pick. Head coach Doug Peterson wants Ike Ekwonu. Ownership wants Aiden Hutchinson. And GM Trent Baalke wants Trayvon Walker. I would say that it's probably leaning less so with tackle and more so with edge rusher, and it's going to come down to ownership and the GM agreeing, or somebody ceding to the other person to just pick. That would be a good thing. I mean, I would want... We would want Walker to go first because between me, you, and everybody listening, I don't think that... Walker, to me, is a project, and this team has its own project of rebuilding itself. They don't need extra projects of building people up to be NFL players. They need NFL players to build them up. So if Walker goes first, that just moves the chart down for the rest of the guys to the Giants.
Agreed 100%.
That said, Scott Bischoff was on some other show, and he said that he had info from Houston in that they are operating under the assumption that the first 3 picks will go. Jaguars take Walker, Lions take Kayvon Thibodeau, and then that scenario, Houston would take Derek Stingley, which would then leave for the Jets at 4 a choice between Hutchinson, Gardner, Neal, Ekwonu, and Cross, which is a treasure trove for the Giants because no matter who the Jets pick, I would take any of those players. Especially Hutchinson. There's no reason Hutchinson should be at 5.
And then the other thing you could do is you can send out feelers for trading at 5.
Sure. Yeah.
And say all of a sudden your price just went way up.
Way up.
Because you really don't want to trade that pick. But if someone wants to give you, a first rounder next year, a first rounder the year after, the pancake deal, you'd be more enticed to do it.
The pancake deal? Does that replace the Ricky Williams hyperbole?
Oh, it's the pancake deal, motherfucker.
The pancake deal. I love it. All right, let's talk pancake deals. Let's skip what they need to do night 1, and let's jump right into trade down scenarios. I have been saying for a long time now that the Giants absolutely need to come away with a first-round pick in 2023 because they need to be prepared to move up for a quarterback should there be one that they like. And they should keep doing this, acquiring first-round picks in the next year until they find that quarterback. And quite frankly, if they want to keep doing it after that, that's fine too. But they need to have 2 first-round picks every year until they find the quarterback they like so they can package that shit up. If they need to throw in some future stuff or a third-round pick or whatever with it so they can move all the way up to get him, then get him. Get your guy, always, but have the ammo to do it. That said, they also don't really have the money to pay for 2 top 10 salaries because the way the salary cap works, these rookie salaries are on a pay scale. So the higher you're drafted, the higher your pay scale. They kind of can't really afford 2 top 10 picks. So trading down should absolutely be on their radar. And all these scenarios we just said, these rumors that are probably not true and probably won't happen, these rumors, these things, they need to be ready for this stuff in case it does happen so that they can do this stuff. The 2 teams that are mostly connected, I would say, with the Giants trading up would be the Steelers at 20. And this is because the Steelers have nothing at quarterback following Ben Roethlisberger, right? Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky. That's pretty brutal. The Steelers are picking at 20. So that's a pretty steep drop from 7 to 20. That's a long one. But I think you can get a first-round pick for that. I mean, the draft chart that people say doesn't matter but also totally matters, they list the Giants at 5 with 1,700 points value, and at 7, 1,500 points value. At 20, the Steelers have 850 points. They could throw in their 84th pick, which is a third-round pick, with it for another 100 and so, 175 points, and then kick in a 2023 first. And I would take that deal. Would you take that deal? Of the 20th, a third-round pick, and a first-round pick next year?
I would, because that third-round pick is important this year. I mean,
sure.
Just because we want to punt on the highest of the high pick for next year, we're still in rebuilding mode, serious rebuilding mode. And
they need players everywhere.
That third-round pick should be a starter somewhere. So
the way I see it, if at 20, you're going to have guys like Kenyon Green that could be there and could seriously help this O-line grow a lot faster. You could have Kyer Elam could be there. That could replace James Bradbury day one and play man coverage in a blitz-heavy scheme the same way he did at UF. Or Andrew Booth from Clemson.
Just don't watch that film.
Corner.
That's all.
What?
I say just don't watch that film of that trying to happen with that blitz-heavy scheme, because it did not work. I mean, everything you see like with film with Kyer Elam, you have to actually give him extra credit, because the way that the defensive scheme was so bad and all the pressure it was put on the backside. So I can see that with your point, though.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that there will be starters at positions of need available. So, like, I know that saying moving down 13 picks is like you're the one getting fleeced, but not really, man. I mean, you're still getting a starter at 20. You're getting an additional third-round pick, which could be another inside linebacker, inside interior offensive lineman. It could be a wide receiver that they desperately will need next year. They will need a wide receiver next year. They kind of need one this year. It could be a tight end they need this year. It could be a linebacker. It could be safety. I mean, the third round, they could get a starter. You're absolutely right.
And also, let's put in perspective, if you're dropping 13 spots, that's not dropping from the first round to the 8th round or something ridiculous. You're dropping still into the, people who are drafting late in the first round are still expecting to get starters and quality players. I think
100%.
People, they hear 13 spots and they're like, oh my God, we're drafting somebody from the XFL all of a sudden. No. Calm down.
Another one is the Saints. They have 16 and 19, but they do not have a first-round pick next year. So this one is less enticing to me, which is why I saved it.
And who's their quarterback?
Well, that's the thing. Who is their quarterback? Jameis Winston and somebody else.
They still have Hill, right?
They still have Taysom Hill. There's somebody else. There's someone else. There's always someone else. It's nobody good, though. They need a quarterback.
It doesn't matter. He sucks.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this.
Right.
The Saints need help at quarterback after Drew Brees. Oh, Andy Dalton. Giants
they have no quarterback.
Yeah. Yes, they have no quarterback. And so the fact that 16 is worth 1,000 points and 19 is worth 875, which is technically them overspending. If there's a quarterback that they want, that's not overspending at all. I mean, while I wouldn't really like that because I'm trying to get a first rounder next year very, very desperately, if this is all that you can wrangle, I would still strongly consider taking 16 and 19 for 7. Absolutely. I mean, especially if you already took your tackle at 5. At 16 and 19, there could be Nakobe Dean, Devin Lloyd, the tackle from Tulsa that I didn't do any work on, who apparently everyone likes. Whoops, sorry. Again, Andrew Booth, Kyer Elam, Daxton Hill, Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green. I mean,
a lot of names.
All of those guys would start day one and fill a position of need at 16 and 19. So now you have 3 first-round picks. Here's the other problem. I don't know if they can afford that. Plus, you're getting 3 fifth-year options when you do this, which kind of sets you up for a need to figure out extensions earlier than you probably want to.
I'm going to pass on the trade.
You're going to pass.
I'm going to pass because I think your point you made earlier, I'm going into this thing with a very open mind about Daniel Jones. I think I've been very fair about him.
I think we both have.
Over the evaluation we've talked about from last year. But I'm also going this with the assumption in the back of my mind that we need a quarterback next year. And you have to be prepared for that. And getting nice players at 17 and 19 and potential starters is good. It helps with the overall. But if we want to move the needle on this team, we need a quarterback, and we need to be prepared. Now, if Daniel Jones has a breakout year this year and we decide to sign him long term and we don't have to use that pick next year for a first rounder, all the better. We can use that for something else.
It's a big deal. You have 2 first-round picks next year. Sorry.
And maybe we can start maybe wheeling and dealing for more moves and things. We don't have to have 2 hop-heavy ones. So I just want to give this team as many options going forward. And all the points you made are very valid. We're dealing with cap issues. There's going to be some relief next year, but what happens in 4 years when all those, we have 3 first-round picks, we have to have 5th-year options, pick them up. And they're not going to be cheap. And maybe in 5 years we screw ourselves again with it seems like every GM who comes in here, by 4th, 5th year, we're dealing with the same cap issues. We hope that's not the problem going forward, but it seems to be a trend. So let's try to avoid some of that schematic issues with the cap, but by spreading those picks out more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. I part of it is I really don't know how they would be able to pay 3 first-rounders, but I think you find a way. I think at that point maybe you're cutting somebody just for shits and giggles, or trading people for peanuts because you're clearing space to get better players.
But every team does that every year. I mean, it's not a Giant-specific thing that they have to cut somebody they don't want to cut and have a cap, casualty. Right. Every single team, you just look on cutdown day and see these guys. You're like, holy shit, really him? Or guys you see in the offseason. It happens to everybody. It's a cost of doing business.
Yeah,
so I'm not too concerned about that.
All right, let's get into what we are concerned about. What do they absolutely need to do night 1?
Get out tackle.
Okay. I have 2 things. Their number 1 thing should be to get a tackle. I know that Jordan Renan is out there saying that you don't need to get a right tackle in the first round, and I actually fully agree with that. What I'm telling you is that the tackle class sucks. So he's wrong. I mean, there is no broad strokes phrase that you can do that applies to every single draft other than maybe the draft is unpredictable. So when you say you can get a guy in X round, you're wrong. You are wrong. That is a year-to-year scenario. And Jordan Renan keeps talking about Luke Gadecki from Central Michigan, who I don't even think projects at tackle, which is why I think he'd be a really good internal offensive lineman.
Look, it boils down to this, Grump. We said it in the beginning. There's 3 potential picks we think might be in the top 10 that are tackles. We're not going to be in this position maybe for a long time.
Yeah.
Where we can get somebody of the quality of a top 10 player on the offensive line for the cost it would take. I mean, how much did Nate Solder cost us?
Too much.
Why was he so expensive?
He was the only one.
On the free agent market. We do not want to go that way to build an offensive line. This is our opportunity to build it in the cheapest way possible, with also the longest time horizon for it. It's like he doesn't have to produce right now. Let this guy grow into the role for year 2 and year 3 when this team around him is getting better and better. So to me, it's the if we again come out of this draft without 5 and 7 and not having an offensive lineman come out of that, I'm going to be very disappointed. And it just screams it has to be done. And if the guy turns into a bust, so be it. I'd rather go through the process and he just doesn't work out than never getting him and always having to play from behind, trying to fill, 2-3 spots on this offensive line for the long term. This way you're solving one of those issues again.
Well, here's the other thing. Who's more likely to bust? Evan Neal, Akeem Ekwonu, Charles Cross, or Bernard Raymond, or Daniel Falele? I mean, if we're talking about potentially busting, I don't think Evan Neal is going to bust sooner than Daniel Falele. I mean, come on. I agree with you entirely. You're in this position now to fix a problem that has been a problem for forever. Why kick it down the road? I mean,
why fuck around? I mean, you have the opportunity to get somebody elite. And again, the guy who's drafted 4th versus the guy who's drafted 10th, they're still elite. We're talking the best of the best of everybody out there who's eligible to be drafted this year. We're
And
splitting hairs.
Also, fuck everything else, man. The NFL is about scoring points. I mean, winning games is about scoring the most points. I don't care how good the defense is. If this offense can't protect the quarterback can't score points, then the team is not going to win. At the end of the day, whether they fix the line this year, next year, the year after, they're never going to win until the line can protect long enough for the offense to score points. That is the name of the game. So
the two main questions we have on this offense for this year have to be solved are, do we have a franchise quarterback, and what do we do about Saquon Barkley?
Agree.
And both of those things are predicated on a line that can protect and block for them.
I think the other thing, well, here's the thing. If they go through day one and do not get a tackle, here are the names that maybe could be there on day 2. Trevor Penning, Daniel Falele, Bernard Raymond, and Abraham Lucas. None of them come without question marks. Big question marks. Trevor Penning could be getting holding penalties for his entire career until he plays in the USFL. Daniel Falele may be too overweight. Bernard Raymond came from Austria. He didn't even go to high school in the States. And Abraham Lucas is just okay.
We're trying to minimize risk.
Yeah.
Those guys are the odds of them being successful are higher than these other guys on day one. There's more risk on hoping these guys will be successful than the guys who are on day one. Why would you want to do that?
I don't know.
In a position of such importance.
Just because you have a JPP like edge sitting there, or Kayvon Thibodeau, or because Sauce Gardner fell to you, or whatever. I'm sorry, man. It's really hard for me to say anyone other than Aiden Hutchinson or some scenario in which I'm guaranteed one of those tackles at 7. It's hard for me to pass on a tackle. It's just too important, and the guys there are too good, and the drop-off is too steep to walk away from it. The other thing that I think they absolutely need to do on night 1, and I'll be really disappointed if they don't, I'm not exaggerating, they need to trade down. I mean, we just went over it. I think it is a bona fide necessity to obtain a first-round pick next year. And I don't know how else you can do it.
Remember, though, trading down relies on a partner to make the trade.
I understand that.
So it's not just...
that doesn't mean I'm just going to be disappointed. I'm not going to blame anyone for not doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be, yes, I'd like to be in position for 2023, but I am fully under the, well, if we're offered a pile of shit, I don't want to make the deal. Sure. Or it just doesn't happen. There's nobody to dance with.
That being said, if they have to sweeten the pot by throwing James Bradberry in on that deal, that should absolutely be done. It shouldn't be forgotten that James Bradberry is likely going to not be a Giant come Saturday night.
Would you throw Kadarius in any deal on draft night?
No way. Not with the dead cap hit he would have pre-June 1.
Agreed.
Is still, I would say there is still a small chance that he is traded post-June 1. But, I mean, all indications to me is that whatever happened with Pat Leonard or whatever, I would just ignore it. because that report broke on Friday and Kadarius Toney was in New York, New Jersey on Saturday. So,
yeah.
And by Friday, I mean Friday afternoon, that story. I was already home from work.
I was just saying as like a sweetener to make a deal happen, would you throw him in?
I guess it depends on when I'm returning. I would have to be able to replace the wide receiver that year.
That's the other thing about getting rid of Kadarius Toney is everybody's so quick to throw him out on a rail. It's like, we talked about a room where there's a lot of question marks and people coming back and, other guys who may be traded as well or might be just cut, in the fall. So,
but I mean,
it's not as easy.
Yeah, no, definitely not easy. But like I said, I won't blame the organization if they're unable to make a deal, but I will be disappointed in general with the result of night 1 if they don't come away with a first-round pick next year. I will. And to me, the ideal scenario is to still have 2 first-round picks when you do it, which,
right.
I don't know how feasible that is. I've never talked to a pancake eater in a high-pressure situation. So, more of a waffle guy myself. The good GMs are waffle guys or French toast, right?
Mm-hmm. We might have to have our next mock draft on breakfasts because that could be a long, intense battle. We'll We'll get Bobby and Justin on that one as well. I'm sure those guys have opinions.
Snacks has got to be there because I guarantee you he's going to be screaming about omelets.
Well, he's the Mil Kiper Jr. Breakfast. Like I've seen him at work at a diner before.
Oh, it's true. I have too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin's opinions might have changed since his diet. All right. That's going to do it for our draft day episode. I am going to be live on Talkin' Giants. I'm not entirely sure what is happening with that. I believe it's just going to be on their YouTube channel, but they're running through. I don't know. I think it's going to be there. Follow that or follow me on Twitter. I'll have more information as we go, but I will be live both nights 1 and 2 with them. I am at @football_grump on Twitter. He's at the Cranky Fan. This show is at Just Giants Pod.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I'm excited. This team is going to be better Friday night. It's going to be even better Saturday night. And then the coming weeks we'll have some content with other creators. We'll discuss the draft and we'll do cut-ups of all the brand new New York Giants as well.
You just took the bottom line I had. As much as you're going to quibble about who we take, do we take this lineman, did we trade down? We didn't trade. At the end of the weekend, we can finally say that this football team will be better than it was right now. And that's the key for this team. They got to get better, significantly better, talent-wise, depth-wise, all of these things. And the easiest way to do that is in the draft. So I hope you guys aren't up too late tonight practicing your pissed off videos and all these type of things, and your overreactions and your canned expressions. Just go through the draft, watch the whole first round, see how it plays out. Just because we make a pick doesn't mean it's going to be our pick. Let's see how it plays, and then we'll discuss as well about whatever happens.
That's right. So stay tuned to this channel for not draft reactions, but full actual breakdowns of the players that become New York Giants.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. We will catch you next time.
Go Giants.